The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the quiet town of Cedar Ridge. Lily sat by the window of her small bedroom, staring out at the fading light. The cool evening breeze rustled the leaves of the old oak tree outside, but it did nothing to soothe the knot in her chest. She could still hear the echoes of laughter from that afternoon, the sound of their voices mingling in the warmth of summer. Ethan's laugh had always been her favorite, deep, genuine, and somehow always comforting. But today, it had been the last sound she would ever hear from him. Lily had known Ethan since childhood. They had grown up together, shared the same school, the same neighborhood, and the same dreams of something bigger than their small-town life. He was the son of the wealthiest family in Cedar Ridge, his father a successful businessman whose company had roots that stretched far beyond the town's borders. Lily, on the other hand, came from a modest background. Her father worked as a mechanic, and her mother had passed away when Lily was young. She had always been the quiet girl in the background, content with her simple life and the love she found in the small moments. But with Ethan, everything was different. He was everything she wasn't: confident, charismatic, and full of life. He made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. The two of them had been inseparable since they were teenagers, sharing secrets under the stars and dreaming about a future where nothing else mattered but the two of them. Their connection was something unspoken, something that ran deep in their hearts and minds. It wasn't just a crush. It was love. Real, raw, and deep. They had spent countless afternoons by the river, tucked away from the world, talking about their future. Ethan would talk about his dreams of running his father's business, of becoming a leader in the community. Lily would talk about her aspirations, about leaving Cedar Ridge and seeing the world. She dreamed of a life beyond the confines of her small town, a life where she could make a name for herself. They both shared a longing for something more than what was given to them, but together, they had promised each other that nothing would stand in their way. But love, Lily would soon learn, wasn't enough to overcome the barriers life threw their way. It was the day before graduation when Ethan's world and hers collided in a way neither of them could have anticipated. He had asked her to meet him by the old oak tree at their spot by the river. She had been eager to see him. After all, their future was just beginning. They were supposed to go to college together to take on the world hand in hand. When she arrived, her heart leapt at the sight of him standing there, waiting for her with that familiar, reassuring smile. But something in his eyes was different. The light that had always danced there was dim, replaced by a shadow she didn't understand. He wasn't smiling like he usually did, and that made her stomach churn. "Hey, Lils," Ethan said softly, his voice faltering slightly as he greeted her. "Can we talk?" Her stomach twisted as she sensed that something was wrong. They sat down beneath the tree, the sounds of the river flowing softly in the background. The warmth of the sun seemed to fade as Ethan's words began to sink in. "I've been thinking a lot and I've made a decision," he began, his words coming out slowly, each one heavier than the last. Lily's heart raced in her chest, her palms starting to sweat. "What do you mean?" "We're graduating tomorrow, Ethan. What's going on?" "I love you, Lils," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I always have. But I can't do this anymore." Her breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean you can't do this? We're about to start our lives together. Everything we've worked for, all the dreams we've shared." "I know," Ethan said, his voice almost a whisper. "But my family, they won't allow it. They want me to marry someone from a good family, someone who can help the business, someone who fits in with their expectations. They don't approve of you, Lils. They never have." Lily's world seemed to tilt.
"What?"
"Ethan, we've been together for years. Your family knew how we felt about each other. They knew how much we loved each other. Why now? Why are you letting them do this to us?" He reached out to touch her hand, but she pulled it back, the pain in her chest swelling with each passing second. "I've tried, Lils. I really have. But the pressure's too much. My father, my mother, they've already arranged everything. The engagement, the wedding. It's all set. I can't break it." Her mind raced, the words not fully sinking in. The world around her felt like it was crashing down. This couldn't be happening.
Not now.
Not after everything they had been through. So, that's it? You're just going to let them tear us apart? She asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with regret, but he didn't know how to fix what was broken. I don't want to hurt you, Lily, but I don't have a choice. I have to do this for my family, for my future. A tear slipped down Lily's cheek, and she quickly wiped it away, her heart aching in a way she had never felt before. She had always believed in their love, always trusted that they would find a way to make things work. But now, faced with the reality of their situation, she realized how powerless they both were against the forces beyond their control. You're choosing them over me, she whispered, the words cutting deeper than any knife could. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice barely audible. He stood up slowly, his face a mask of anguish. I'll always love you, Lils, but I have to let you go. The wind picked up, swirling around them, as if nature itself could feel the heartbreak that was unfolding. Lily watched him walk away, his back turned, until he disappeared from sight. The world felt emptier in that moment, as if everything she had believed in had been stripped away. She sat there for hours after he left, the setting sun casting long shadows over the landscape. She had never felt so alone. Ethan was gone, no longer part of her life, no longer the boy who had once promised her the world. The pain in her chest was unbearable, but as the night deepened, Lily knew that she couldn't let this be the end of her story. She would rise above it. She would rebuild herself, stronger than before. She had to. But she would never forget him. Never forget the love they shared, the promises they made. Ethan would always be a part of her, even if their love had been torn apart by the cruel hands of fate. Lily stood up, wiping away the last of her tears. She had no idea what the future held, but one thing was clear: she would never let herself be defined by this heartbreak. She would move forward. She would make her own future, and if fate ever decided to bring her and Ethan together again, then she would face him as someone who had learned to survive without him. But for now, she walked away, determined to leave the past behind and build the life she had always dreamed of. The years that followed the day Ethan walked away from her were a blur of determination, pain, and unyielding resolve. Lily didn't let herself fall into despair. Instead, she threw herself into her studies, working harder than ever to prove to herself and the world that she could rise above the heartbreak that had once seemed like the end of everything. Graduating from high school was a bittersweet moment. As she walked across the stage, receiving her diploma, she could almost feel the weight of her father's expectations on her shoulders. He was proud of her, of course, but there was always that unspoken pressure, an expectation that she would live up to the potential he knew she had, even if he didn't know exactly how to help her get there. With the money she had saved from working part-time jobs during high school and a scholarship, Lily moved to the city to attend university. She majored in business, wanting to break free from her past and build a future for herself, one that had nothing to do with the painful memories of a love lost. She knew it wouldn't be easy. After all, she was from a small town and didn't have the connections or the wealth that many of her classmates did. But that never stopped her. She studied late into the night, attended every networking event, and made herself known. It was all part of her plan, to make something of herself, to prove that she didn't need anyone, not even Ethan, to succeed. Her first job out of college was a small marketing role at a local startup. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a stepping stone. She worked tirelessly, proving her worth every single day, slowly climbing up the ranks. It was there, in the hustle of the corporate world, that she realized just how strong she had become. The old Lily, the girl who had once believed in the fairy tale of love and happy endings, was gone. In her place was a woman who knew that the only person she could count on was herself. And yet, even with all her success, there was still a part of her that longed for the life she had once envisioned with Ethan. She tried to push those thoughts to the back of her mind, focusing instead on the business she was building. The world had moved on, and so had she. Or, at least, she tried to convince herself that she had. It was 5 years later when their paths crossed again. Lily had just landed a major deal with a tech company that was set to propel her career to new heights. She was now the CEO of her own rapidly growing marketing firm, a position she had worked tirelessly to earn. Her company was thriving, and Lily had become a name in business circles, respected and admired by her peers. That day, she was preparing for an important meeting with a new potential client when her assistant called. "Miss Harper, there's someone here to see you. His name is Ethan King." The name hit her like a punch to the gut. She hadn't heard that name in years. She had done her best to forget about him, but hearing it again brought back a flood of memories. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before answering. "Send him in," she said, her voice calm but her mind racing. When the door opened, time seemed to slow. Ethan stood there, looking as handsome and confident as ever, but something in his eyes had changed. The boy who had once been full of uncertainty was now a man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. His expensive suit, the sharp cut of his jaw, the way he held himself, all of it screamed success. But it was the sadness in his eyes, the quiet regret, that made Lily's heart ache. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. There was a long, awkward pause before he spoke. "Lily," he said her name softly, as though testing it on his lips, unsure of how she would react. Lily stood, maintaining her composure, but her mind was racing. The years apart had done little to diminish the lingering emotions between them. She was no longer the girl he had known. And yet, seeing him again felt like nothing had changed, as though their love had been waiting for this moment to resurface. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked, her voice colder than she intended. She couldn't let herself be vulnerable again, not after everything. Ethan's eyes flickered with a mix of guilt and something deeper, something that had always been there, even when he had walked away. I came to apologize," he said, his voice full of remorse. "I should have fought for us. I should have never let you go. But at the time, I didn't know how to stand up to my family. I didn't know how to choose between them and you." Lily's heart twisted painfully, but she forced herself to stay composed. "You made your choice, Ethan. You chose them. You walked away from me, from everything we had. I've spent years learning to live without you." "I know," he replied quietly, his voice cracking slightly. "And I've regretted it every single day. I've never stopped loving you, Lily. I've always wondered what would have happened if I had been stronger, if I hadn't let them control my decisions." Lily's throat tightened. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much his absence had hurt her, how much his betrayal had scarred her. But she didn't. She was stronger than that now. She had built her own life, and she didn't need him to validate it. "I've moved on, Ethan," she said, the words feeling like a weight lifted from her chest. "I'm not that girl anymore. I don't need you to apologize. I've built a life for myself, and I'm proud of it. You didn't break me. You only made me stronger." Ethan took a step forward, his voice desperate. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I'm here. I've come back to make things right, to show you that I'm not the same person I was. I want to earn your trust if you'll let me." Lily took a deep breath, the conflicting emotions inside her swirling. She had worked so hard to get to where she was. She had worked so hard to forget him, to move on. But seeing him standing there, vulnerable and regretful, brought up feelings she thought she had buried long ago. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she said, her voice steady, but the pain was still there, buried deep within her. "But I'm not the same person I was either." Ethan nodded, understanding. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. But if there's any chance, any possibility that we could try again, I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Lily met his gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. The decision wasn't easy. There were too many years of hurt between them, too many unanswered questions. But one thing was clear, Ethan had always been a part of her. And maybe, just maybe, this time they could find a way to rebuild what they had lost. "I can't promise anything, Ethan," she said softly. "But I'm willing to see where this goes. For the first time in a long time, I'm willing to give us a chance." As he stepped closer, his eyes filled with hope, Lily realized that some loves never truly die, They just wait, quietly, until the time is right. And maybe, just maybe, the time was finally right for them to try again. The weeks following their unexpected reunion were filled with a delicate tension, a mixture of old memories and new possibilities. Ethan's presence in Lily's life, once something she had desperately tried to forget, had now become a complicated thread in the tapestry she had so carefully woven. But despite the walls she had built around her heart, she couldn't ignore the pull he still had on her. They started meeting outside of work, casual coffees, occasional lunches, and long walks through the park. Every time they spoke, Lily was reminded of the closeness they had once shared, the comfort of his presence, and the quiet strength he had always offered. But there was also an underlying sense of unease, an understanding that things could never truly return to how they had been. The past had left too many scars. Ethan seemed determined to prove that he had changed. He worked tirelessly to show Lily that he was no longer the boy who had let his family control his decisions. He was now a man who understood the value of fighting for what he wanted. But for all his efforts, Lily found herself questioning whether she could truly forgive him, whether she could ever truly trust him again. Her company was at a critical juncture. Lily was planning to expand her firm internationally, a move that would require not just financial backing but also strategic partnerships. That's when Ethan, now working in his family's company, entered the picture. One afternoon, she found herself sitting across from him in a sleek boardroom, the room filled with the sound of papers shuffling as they discussed a potential partnership. The tension between them was palpable, but both of them kept their composure, focused on the business at hand. "I think we could help you with the international expansion," Ethan said, his voice confident, yet still carrying the undertones of the man who had once been her love. "We have the resources, and we're already established in a few of the countries you're looking to enter." Lily couldn't ignore the way her heart fluttered when he spoke. It had been years, but some things hadn't changed. He still had the ability to make her feel things she wasn't ready to feel. Still, she kept her focus. "We'll need to review the terms and see if it aligns with our goals," she replied, keeping her tone professional. "I'm not making any decisions without thoroughly vetting all potential partners." Ethan nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. There was a silent understanding between them, one that neither of them spoke aloud. They were both playing a game of business, of course, but also of emotions. After the meeting, Lily walked him out of the building. The cool breeze from the evening air helped clear her mind, but it didn't make the weight in her chest any easier to bear. As they reached the door, Ethan stopped her, his hand gently brushing against her arm. "Lily," he began, his voice low, "I know this is complicated. I know I've hurt you, and I understand that you have every right to keep your distance. But I need you to know, I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I just want a chance to show you who I am now, who I've become." Lily looked at him, her heart a storm of conflicting emotions. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that," she said quietly. "You hurt me, Ethan. And no matter how much time has passed, I can't just forget that. I've worked so hard to build a life without you, without relying on anyone. I can't risk losing that again." He nodded, his expression softening. "I don't expect you to forget. I just want to prove that I'm worthy of being part of your life again. But if you don't want that, I'll respect it. I'll walk away and leave you to your work, your life. I've hurt you enough, Lily. I just wanted to let you know that I'll always be here if you change your mind." Lily swallowed, trying to keep her emotions in check. She had spent so many years trying to move forward, trying to leave the past behind. And now, Ethan was standing here, offering her something that was both terrifying and tempting. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice steady, but laced with uncertainty. "But I'm not sure I can let you back in. Not yet." Ethan gave a small, understanding smile. "That's okay. I'm not asking for everything, Lily. I just want a chance." As she watched him walk away, the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. She had always been the one to push forward, to keep moving no matter what obstacles life put in her path. But now, for the first time, she wasn't sure what the right path was. The following weeks were a whirlwind of business meetings, new partnerships, and expanding her company's reach into new markets. But amidst all the excitement, Lily found herself thinking about Ethan more and more. She had never been one to believe in fate, but there was something about the way their lives had intersected again. Perhaps it was a sign. Or perhaps it was just a reminder that some love stories were never truly finished, no matter how much time had passed. She kept her distance, focusing on her work, but Ethan was persistent. He continued to show up at her office, his presence never intruding but always there, just enough to remind her of the person she had once loved. He didn't push her, didn't demand anything from her. And that, in itself, was both comforting and frustrating. It made her question whether she was being too cautious, too afraid to open herself up again. Her employees had noticed the change in her. They saw how her thoughts seemed to drift, how her eyes would sometimes linger on the window as if she were waiting for something or someone. Her assistant, Kate, finally had enough of the silence. "You know," Kate said one afternoon as they were wrapping up a meeting, "it's obvious something's going on with you. And I think I know what it is." Lily frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're still thinking about him," Kate said, her voice gentle but firm.
"Ethan."
"You can deny it all you want, but you're not fooling anyone. If you still care about him, maybe it's time to let him in." Lily looked at her assistant, torn between the urge to deny it and the truth she knew deep down. "I don't know if I can, Kate. It's complicated. He hurt me. I built a life without him, and I'm not sure I can go back to the person I was when I was with him." Kate smiled knowingly. "Maybe you're not supposed to go back to who you were. Maybe this time, you can both move forward. Together." Lily sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Could she really open herself up again? Could she take the risk of loving Ethan once more, knowing that the past might repeat itself? The answer, she realized, wasn't as clear-cut as she once thought. But for the first time in years, Lily felt like maybe, just maybe, it was worth taking a chance. After all, some love stories were meant to be revisited, even if the pages were marked with scars. And perhaps it was time to turn the page on the past and see where the future would lead. Lily's life felt like it was caught between two worlds. On one hand, there was the world she had worked so hard to build, her successful marketing firm, her independence, her growth. On the other hand, there was Ethan, who seemed to be steadily reappearing in her life, challenging everything she thought she had moved on from. His presence was a reminder of the love she once thought would define her future, and now it was unclear whether that future was still possible. The days following Ethan's admission that he still loved her were filled with contemplation. Lily went through her daily routine as usual, handling the growing demands of her business and the new partnerships she had formed. Yet, every time she closed her eyes, she could see Ethan's face, his eyes filled with regret and longing. It was as if his return had stirred something deep inside her that she thought had long been dormant. Her assistant, Kate, had been the only one who saw through her walls. Kate's persistent questioning, her gentle nudges to face the emotions she was trying so hard to bury, made Lily realize that maybe she had been hiding from the one thing that could heal her heart, accepting the possibility of a second chance. The opportunity to face that possibility came sooner than expected. One evening, as Lily was leaving her office, she found Ethan waiting by her car. He wasn't intruding, just standing there, his back against the wall, looking as if he had been there for hours, lost in thought. Lily hesitated before walking toward him. Her heart was a battlefield. Half of her wanted to push him away, to stay in control of her emotions, and the other half wanted to run into his arms and forget everything that had come before. "Lily," Ethan said softly when she stopped in front of him, "I've been thinking a lot. About us. About what happened. And I know I can't undo the past. I can't fix the pain I caused you, but I can promise you this. I've never stopped loving you. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for my mistakes, if you'll let me." Lily took a deep breath, her eyes on the ground as she processed his words. Her emotions were raw, more than she had realized. She had spent so many years building up walls, convincing herself that she was fine on her own. But now, standing here with him, she felt exposed. I'm not the same girl I was when you left, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I've changed. I've learned to be strong on my own. I built a life without you, and I'm proud of that life. I don't need anyone to complete me. Ethan nodded, as though he had been expecting this. I know. And I'm not asking you to need me. I just want the chance to be a part of your life again. To support you, not to hold you back, but to walk beside you. If you'll let me. Lily felt the knot in her chest tighten. She wasn't sure if she was ready to open that door again, to risk letting someone into her carefully constructed world. But as she looked into Ethan's eyes, she realized that maybe there was more to life than control. Maybe love, even the love that had hurt her, was worth taking a chance on. I can't promise anything, Ethan, she said softly. But I'm willing to try. Maybe we can start slow, see where this goes. Ethan's face lit up with relief, but he didn't rush forward. He didn't demand anything. He simply nodded, a silent promise between them. I'll be here, whenever you're ready. In the following weeks, they began to rebuild their connection, cautiously at first. They started with small steps, having dinner together, sharing stories of the years they had spent apart, slowly learning who they had become. The dynamic between them had shifted. The once young, carefree couple was now two adults who had lived separate lives, shaped by experiences that had left them both scarred and stronger. Ethan was patient with her. He didn't push for more than she was willing to give. They talked about the past, the mistakes he had made, the pain she had carried for so long. He apologized again, this time without expectation, as if simply acknowledging the hurt was enough. Lily, in turn, shared her journey, how she had learned to stand on her own, to let go of the girl who had once been in love with him, and how she had forged a path that was entirely hers. But despite their progress, Lily knew the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There were still obstacles between them. Unresolved feelings, lingering doubts, and the undeniable fact that their worlds were different now. She had worked so hard to make her own way, and Ethan was still tethered to his family's wealth and power. Could they really bridge that gap? One night, as they sat in a quiet cafe after a long day of meetings, Lily felt the weight of the unspoken words hanging between them. She had been wrestling with her feelings for weeks, unsure of how to proceed. I need to ask you something, she said, looking up at him, her eyes serious. What do you want from me, Ethan? You keep saying you're here for me, but what does that mean? Are you just looking for a second chance, or are you trying to fit me back into a life you've already planned out for yourself? Ethan didn't hesitate. I want a second chance, Lily. Not to control you or make you fit into my life, but to share it with you. I've spent years realizing that no matter what I achieved or how successful I became, none of it meant anything without you. I'm not trying to force you into anything. I just want you to know that if you'll have me, I'm ready to walk beside you as equals. Lily's heart softened at his words, but the doubts still lingered. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to let him back in without losing everything she had worked so hard for? You say that, but it's hard to believe, she admitted. I've built my own life, Ethan. And I've done it without you. I'm not sure if I'm ready to risk it all for the past. Ethan took her hand gently, his grip firm but tender. I'm not asking you to risk everything. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I've changed. I don't want to take anything from you, Lily. I just want to build something together, if you'll let me. For the first time in a long while, Lily felt her defenses begin to crumble. There were no guarantees, no promises that everything would work out the way they both hoped. But in that moment, she realized that maybe love wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about taking chances, even when the outcome was uncertain. Okay, she said quietly, her voice filled with a mix of fear and hope. We'll take it slow. We'll see where it goes. Ethan's eyes sparkled with relief and gratitude, but he didn't push her any further. Instead, he simply nodded, his hand still holding hers as if he was unwilling to let go. They didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, they were both willing to find out, together. Lily had spent so many years building her life around herself, making decisions based on what she thought was best for her, and avoiding anything that could lead to the kind of heartbreak she had experienced with Ethan. But now, with him back in her life, things felt different. She couldn't deny that the connection they shared was still there, though wrapped in the complexities of the years they had spent apart. The beginning was slow, but the foundation they were building was strong. They met more often, sometimes for lunch, sometimes for dinner, and occasionally for quiet walks after work. Their conversations were no longer filled with the innocent chatter of teenagers in love, but with deeper discussions about their hopes, their fears, and the lives they had created while they were apart. They were learning to navigate each other's worlds, to see the person they had become rather than the people they once were. Ethan was patient, but Lily could feel the weight of his gaze every time they sat together. He never pushed for anything more than what she was willing to give, but his quiet determination was clear in every gesture. He wanted her more than anything. He wanted her to see that he was no longer the same person who had walked away all those years ago. Lily, however, wasn't sure if she was ready to allow herself to fall for him again. The past still loomed large between them, and though Ethan's words spoke of change and growth, she couldn't forget the hurt she had felt when he left without so much as a goodbye. It wasn't something she could easily erase, no matter how much time had passed. As the weeks passed, their meetings began to shift in nature. What started as cautious interactions slowly grew into something more natural, more familiar. They began to laugh again, to enjoy each other's company in ways they hadn't in years. There was still an unspoken tension in the air, but there was also the possibility of something new. Something worth fighting for. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Lily found herself at her favorite cafe, a quiet, dimly lit place she often visited to unwind. She had come here before with Ethan, years ago, when they were still young and carefree, talking about their future and dreaming of what might be. She had always thought those dreams were lost, but now, as she sat alone at the same table, the memories felt different. More like a promise than a regret. As she absent-mindedly stirred her coffee, she felt a soft presence at the edge of the table. Looking up, she was surprised to see Ethan standing there, a hesitant smile on his face. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice gentle. Lily looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I figured I'd find you at your favorite spot," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. There was a brief silence between them, filled with the weight of everything unsaid. Ethan didn't rush her. He just waited, allowing her the space to decide how she wanted to proceed. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot, Ethan. About everything. About us." His expression softened, and he leaned in slightly, his eyes locking onto hers. "What have you been thinking?" "I've spent so many years convincing myself that I didn't need anyone, that I was better off alone," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But the truth is, I'm not sure I can keep pretending that I don't still care about you. And that scares me." Ethan's eyes searched hers, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to scare you, Lily. I just want a chance. A real chance. To prove that I'm not the same person I was." Lily swallowed, feeling the weight of his words settle into her chest. She had always prided herself on being strong, on making decisions with her head rather than her heart. But here, in this moment, she couldn't ignore the pull of her heart, the way it raced when he was near, the way his presence made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to love again. "I'm scared, Ethan," she confessed. "I'm scared that if I let you in, I'll lose everything I've worked for. I've built this life without you, and it's mine. I'm afraid to risk it." Ethan reached across the table, his hand gently covering hers. "You don't have to lose anything, Lily. I don't want to take anything from you. I just want to share your life, if you'll let me. I want to be part of the future you've worked so hard to build." Her heart clenched at his words. She knew he wasn't asking for everything. He wasn't asking her to give up her dreams, her career, her independence. But in that moment, Lily realized something important. Love wasn't about giving up who you were or what you wanted. It was about finding someone who could stand beside you, who could support you without trying to change you. "I'm not sure if I'm ready," she said quietly, but there was a softness to her tone, a hint of vulnerability. "But I'm willing to try." Ethan's smile was slow but genuine. "That's all I'm asking for. A chance." The days that followed were filled with small steps toward healing, both for Lily and for Ethan. They spent more time together, slowly learning how to balance their past with the future they both wanted. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when the weight of their history seemed too heavy to bear. But there were also moments of laughter, of connection, and of quiet tenderness that reminded them of what they had once shared. As the weeks turned into months, Lily began to realize something important. She had never really let go of Ethan. She had convinced herself that she was better off without him, but deep down, she had always carried the hope that one day they would find their way back to each other. And now, standing beside him, she felt like maybe, just maybe, they were on the right path. Their journey was just beginning, and though the road ahead was still uncertain, Lily knew one thing for sure. This time, they would face it together. The weeks that followed were filled with moments of quiet reflection and gradual transformation. Lily found herself growing more comfortable with Ethan's presence in her life. They were no longer just two people reuniting after years of separation. They were two people discovering who they had become in the time apart and learning how to integrate those versions into something new, a partnership. Their relationship was no longer just about the spark that had once ignited between them as teenagers. It was about understanding each other as adults, with all the complexities, responsibilities, and dreams that came with it. Lily had always been independent, fiercely so, and she wasn't about to let anyone, least of all Ethan, take that away from her. Yet, she also began to realize that love wasn't about losing yourself. It was about finding someone who would support you, challenge you, and stand by you, even when the world seemed uncertain. But the truth was, the world around them hadn't changed much. Lily had made peace with her career and had built it into something strong and successful. But Ethan's life was different, tied to his family's expectations, to a future that had been mapped out for him long before he ever met Lily. She couldn't deny that she was nervous about that part of his life, the world of wealth, power, and legacy that had kept them apart in the first place. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Lily decided to take a walk to clear her mind. It had become one of her favorite rituals, a way to find peace amid the chaos of her busy life. She needed to think, to process what was happening between her and Ethan. Though they had made great strides in their relationship, there was still the elephant in the room, his family. Would they truly accept her, or would she always be an outsider in his world? As she walked through the park, lost in her thoughts, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from Ethan. "Dinner tomorrow night. Just the two of us. Can we talk?" Lily's heart skipped a beat. She didn't have to ask what it was about. She knew this conversation was coming. There were things left unsaid between them, and it seemed like tonight was the night they would finally address them. The next evening, as Lily sat at the restaurant table across from Ethan, the atmosphere felt heavier than usual. The soft glow of the candlelight flickered between them, but neither of them could ignore the tension in the air. Ethan leaned forward, his expression serious. "Lily, there's something I need to tell you. Something about my family." Lily took a deep breath, her hands resting on the edge of the table. "I'm listening. I've always known that my family would never approve of you. They think I should be with someone from a similar background, someone who fits into the world they've created for me." Ethan's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the weight of his words. "But I don't care. I never have. And I'm not going to let them dictate my life anymore." Lily's heart raced, but a flicker of doubt still lingered. She had heard him say these things before, but this was different. This time, there was a firmness in his voice, a resolve she hadn't heard before. "But the thing is," Ethan continued, his gaze not leaving hers, "I don't want to drag you into this. Into the drama, the pressure, the expectations. I don't want to put you through what I went through when we were younger. And I know this is asking a lot, but I need to know if you're really ready for what it means to be with me, not just as Ethan, the man who loves you, but as Ethan, the heir to a legacy that I'm bound to inherit." Lily sat back in her chair, her mind spinning. She had always known that Ethan came from a world of privilege, a world that had expectations that might be impossible to escape. But now, hearing him speak about it so openly, it felt different. This was no longer just a romance between two people who had once been in love. This was a choice, a commitment, one that would affect every part of her life. "I've been independent for so long, Ethan," Lily said slowly, her voice quiet but resolute. "I've built a life that's mine. And I've been afraid that if I let you in completely, I'd lose that. I've seen how your family works. They don't let anyone stand on their own. And I won't be anyone's pawn again." Ethan reached out, his hand gently covering hers. "I don't want you to be a pawn, Lily. I want you to be my partner. Not in my family's world, but in our world. What we have doesn't have to be defined by their expectations." "But it will be," Lily said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I can't ignore the fact that your family still has so much control over you. What happens when they try to pull you back into their world? What happens when they tell you that I'm not good enough, that I don't belong in your life?" Ethan's eyes darkened with determination. "Then I'll stand up to them. I'll choose you. I'll choose our future together." Lily's heart clenched at his words, but doubt still lingered. She had fought so hard for her independence, for a life that didn't rely on anyone else. And now it felt like everything was on the line. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself to step into his world without losing the life she had built? "I need time to think, Ethan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what the future holds for us, but I need to know that I'm making the right decision for both of us." Ethan nodded, his grip on her hand tightening for a moment before he released it. "I'll give you all the time you need, Lily. I'm not going anywhere." Over the next few days, Lily took a step back from everything. She spent hours walking through the park, reflecting on the conversation with Ethan and the emotions that had risen within her. It wasn't just about love anymore. It was about what she was willing to give up and what she was willing to risk. She knew that if she chose to be with Ethan, it wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be a fairy tale romance where they lived happily ever after without any obstacles. It would mean stepping into a world filled with expectations and power struggles. But could she really walk away from the one person who had always held a piece of her heart? One evening, as Lily sat on her balcony, gazing out at the city skyline, her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "We need to talk. I've made a decision. Can we meet?" Her heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment where everything would change. Lily sat on her balcony, staring at the screen of her phone, the text message from Ethan still burning in her hand. She had been expecting it, yet now that it was here, the reality of it hit her hard. Ethan had made a decision. The weight of that phrase echoed in her mind, as it meant the culmination of everything they had been struggling with for months, the uncertainty, the fear, the love. Whatever he had decided, it would change everything. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stood up, the cool night air brushing against her skin. She couldn't remember a time when she had felt so torn, so unsure of what the right choice was. The life she had built, the independence she had fought so hard for, was all at risk. But on the other hand, she had never felt so alive when she was with him. Ethan had always been a part of her, and no matter how hard she tried to bury the past, it seemed to resurface in moments like this, moments when it became impossible to deny the connection they still shared. After a few minutes of deep breathing to calm her racing thoughts, she made up her mind. She would meet him. It was time to face whatever was coming. The cafe where they agreed to meet was quiet, a secluded spot away from the noise of the city. As Lily arrived, she saw Ethan sitting at a corner table, his back to her. He seemed lost in thought, his usual confidence replaced by an air of quiet intensity. It was clear that whatever decision he had made, it had been weighing on him for some time. Taking a deep breath, Lily walked toward him, her heels clicking softly on the stone floor. Ethan turned at the sound, and their eyes met across the table. A flash of emotion passed between them. Love, fear, hope, all tangled up in one glance. "You came," Ethan said, his voice low but full of meaning. "I wouldn't miss it," Lily replied, her heart racing. She took a seat across from him, her hands folded on the table, her mind racing. "You said you made a decision. What's it about?" Ethan took a deep breath, his gaze steady. but filled with an intensity that made Lily's pulse quicken. I've spent the last few days thinking about everything, about us, about my family, about what I really want in life. And I've come to a conclusion. Lily's heart was in her throat as she waited for him to continue. Every word felt like it could change the course of her life. I'm not going to let my family dictate my future, Ethan said, his voice clear and firm. I've spent too long trying to live up to their expectations. But I'm done with that. I don't want to be the person they've tried to mold me into. I want to be the person who makes his own choices, who builds his life the way he wants to, with the people he cares about. Lily stared at him, stunned by the gravity of his words. But Ethan, your family. I've already told them, Ethan interrupted, his eyes locking onto hers. I told them I'm not going to follow their path. That I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Lily's breath caught in her chest. She had always known that Ethan was strong, but to hear him stand up to his family like this, to choose her over everything he had been groomed for, was something she hadn't expected. It was a leap of faith, one that would change everything for both of them. I don't want to put you in a position where you feel like you have to choose between me and your dreams, Ethan said, his voice softer now. But I'm asking you, Lily, to take this chance with me. I'm willing to fight for us if you are. Lily's mind was racing, 1,000 thoughts running through her head. She could feel the weight of the decision she was about to make, the decision to trust Ethan again, to step into a world that was not only filled with love but with challenges she had never anticipated. She had worked so hard to build a life that was hers and hers alone. Could she really risk it all? As she looked into Ethan's eyes, the uncertainty began to melt away. She had always known that love was never easy, that it required sacrifices, but what she hadn't realized was how much she was willing to sacrifice for the man sitting in front of her. I'm scared, Lily said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm scared that I'll lose myself in this. I've built everything on my own terms, Ethan. I've fought for everything I have, and I don't want to lose that. Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. You won't lose yourself, Lily. I don't want you to change. I want us to grow together, not apart. I'm not asking you to leave everything behind. I'm asking you to take a chance on us, on a future where we both get to be who we are, together. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, the overwhelming mix of emotions she had been holding and breaking through. Ethan's sincerity, his unwavering commitment, was too much to ignore. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't standing on the edge of something dangerous, but rather on the edge of something beautiful. I don't know if I'm ready, Ethan, Lily said softly. But maybe it's time to take that leap. Ethan's face softened, his grip on her hand tightening with a mixture of relief and hope. That's all I'm asking for, Lily. Just a chance. In that moment, Lily knew there was no going back. The decision had been made. She was ready to take the leap. She was ready to fight for their love, to fight for their future. And no matter what happened next, they would face it together. The days that followed were filled with new beginnings. Ethan and Lily faced their challenges head-on, navigating the complexities of their relationship, his family's resistance, and the demands of their careers. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And for the first time in years, Lily felt like she was living her life, not defined by her past, but by the choices she was making in the present. Ethan's family fought against their relationship at every turn, trying to manipulate, control, and tear them apart. But Ethan's resolve was stronger than ever, and Lily stood beside him, supporting him in ways she never thought possible. They faced the battles together, their love growing stronger with each obstacle they overcame. And as time passed, the walls that had once kept them apart began to crumble. Lily realized that the love they shared was not just about the passion of youth or the idealism of teenage dreams. It was about the strength they found in each other, the way they pushed each other to be better, to grow, and to evolve. They weren't just building a future together. They were building a life. And through it all, they knew one thing for certain. They were exactly where they were meant to be. It had been 6 months since Lily and Ethan made their decision to build a future together, despite the obstacles they faced. Their relationship had evolved from the love of 2 teenagers to the bond of 2 adults, determined to carve out their own path. The challenges were real, but so was the strength of their commitment to one another. Ethan had stood firm against his family's pressure, making it clear that his life was no longer theirs to dictate. And Lily, despite her fears and doubts, had opened her heart to him again, choosing to trust that they could navigate this new chapter together. But just as their personal lives began to settle into a rhythm, a new challenge emerged, one that threatened not only their relationship but also everything Lily had worked for. It started with a phone call. One of Lily's most trusted business associates, David, had been acting increasingly distant, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The company had been expanding rapidly, and with that growth came a surge of competition. One day, Lily's legal team informed her of a new hostile takeover attempt, led by none other than Ethan's family. It didn't take long for Lily to piece everything together. David, once a loyal confidant, had been working as a mole for Ethan's family, feeding them information about the company's inner workings. It was all part of a larger plan to bring her down, to take over her business and claim the empire she had built from the ground up. The betrayal hit her like a punch to the gut. David had been more than just a business partner. He had been a friend, someone she trusted implicitly. And now he had stabbed her in the back. Lily paced back and forth in her office, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She had built this company with nothing but her hard work, her vision, and her ambition. She had fought against the odds to make a name for herself in a world that often didn't make room for women like her. And now someone was trying to take it all away. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Ethan. "Can we talk tonight? There's something I need to explain." Her stomach twisted into knots. She had no idea what Ethan could possibly have to explain. His family's role in the hostile takeover attempt was obvious. He had to know about it, and he had to have known it would affect her business. Lily stared at the message for a long time, her mind torn. She had spent so many years building a life independent of Ethan's world, a life where she didn't have to rely on anyone. But now, it seemed that world was encroaching on hers in ways she hadn't anticipated. With a deep sigh, she typed a quick reply. "Meet me at 8. We need to talk." Later that evening, as Ethan walked into her office, he seemed anxious, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a tension that was hard to ignore. He had been trying to reach her all day, but she had avoided his calls, unsure of what to say. Now, seeing him in person, the emotions she had been holding back all day came flooding to the surface. Lily didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I know about the takeover," she said, her voice steady but laced with anger. "I know you're behind it, Ethan." Ethan froze, his face pale, as if he had been expecting this moment but still didn't know how to face it. "Lily, I swear, I had no idea my family was behind it. I've been trying to fight them on this." "Fight them?" Lily echoed, her voice rising. "You think that's enough? Do you think I don't know that your family has the power to destroy everything I've worked for? I built this company from the ground up, Ethan. And now they think they can just take it from me like it's some game." Ethan took a step toward her, his expression pained. "Lily, I've been trying to stop them. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want you to be caught in the middle of this. But you have to understand that I'm not like them. I don't want to see you lose everything you've worked for." Lily crossed her arms, her heart aching with frustration. "Then why didn't you tell me about it sooner? Why didn't you trust me enough to let me in on what was happening? You've always said we were a team, but now I'm starting to feel like I'm fighting this battle alone." Ethan's gaze dropped to the floor, guilt and regret flashing in his eyes. "I didn't want you to be dragged into this. I thought I could handle it on my own, that I could protect you from this world. But I see now that I was wrong." Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. It wasn't just about Ethan's family anymore. It was about the life she had built, the career, the independence, the legacy, and the choice she had to make about how much she was willing to fight for it. "I can't be with you, Ethan, if your family keeps trying to destroy me," she said softly. "I can't stand by and watch everything I've worked for crumble because of the decisions they're making." Ethan's eyes filled with desperation. "I'm not my family, Lily. Please, don't make me choose between you and them. I want to be with you. I want to build a future with you, not with them." But I need you to believe that I'm on your side." Lily closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She had never been one to let anyone dictate her future. She had worked too hard to get to where she was. But Ethan's sincerity, his commitment to her, made it impossible to ignore the love they shared. She had always known that their love wasn't just about passion. It was about trust, loyalty, and a shared vision of the future. But now, she had to make a choice. A choice about what mattered more, her career or the man she loved. As the hours passed, Lily's thoughts swirled in a whirlwind of emotions. She couldn't deny the pull she still felt for Ethan. But could she risk everything, her independence, her career, for a chance at happiness with him? And if she did, would Ethan truly be able to fight his family's influence? Or would she always be fighting this battle alone? The decision lingered in Lily's mind like a heavy fog. She didn't sleep that night, the thoughts of her past, present, and future colliding in a whirlwind of emotions. She had spent so many years carving out a life for herself, building something that didn't rely on anyone but herself. The trust she had placed in Ethan, in their shared history, now seemed fragile, shattered by the revelations of his family's attempts to take her company. But as the sun rose the next morning, Lily realized something that shifted her perspective. Ethan wasn't the same person he had been when they were teenagers. He had changed, had learned, and had fought to stand on his own 2 feet. And for better or worse, he was still fighting for her, for them. With a sense of resolution settling over her, Lily knew that she couldn't let the past dictate her future. She had to choose. Not just between Ethan and her career, but between the fear of losing everything she had worked for and the possibility of building something stronger together. When Lily arrived at the office later that day, she found Ethan waiting for her outside, his face etched with worry. He looked as though he hadn't slept either. His eyes met hers with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Without saying a word, she walked up to him and paused, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I've thought about it," Lily said, her voice steady, but filled with the weight of her decision. "I can't keep running away from the truth. If we're going to make this work, we need to face everything together." Ethan's face softened, relief washing over him. "Lily." She shook her head, holding up a hand to stop him.
"No, Ethan."
"It's not going to be easy. There's a lot we need to work through. But if you're serious about standing up to your family, if you're ready to put everything on the line for us, then I'm willing to fight with you." Ethan stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know how much this means to me. I promise, I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, to make sure you never have to feel like you're fighting alone again." Lily met his gaze, a sense of calmness settling over her. "Then let's do it. Let's fight together. You, me, and everything we've built." Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly to not only defend her company but also to rebuild the trust that had been damaged. Lily had her legal team working around the clock, gathering evidence and preparing a counterattack. But she also made it clear to Ethan that this wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about proving to each other that they were willing to make sacrifices for the future they both wanted. Ethan stood by her every step of the way, using his position in the corporate world to apply pressure on his family, while simultaneously defending Lily's business interests. It wasn't easy, and the strain began to show in their personal lives. There were late nights, tense conversations, and moments when they both questioned whether they could truly overcome the obstacles in their path. But every time the doubt crept in, they reminded each other why they were doing this in the first place, for the life they wanted to build together. One evening, as Lily reviewed a pile of legal documents in her office, Ethan walked in, his face serious, but with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "We've got them," he said, holding up a thick folder. "I've got the evidence we need. It's enough to end the hostile takeover attempt for good." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She stood up from her desk, her hands trembling slightly with a mix of excitement and exhaustion. "You're sure?" Ethan nodded. "We've got proof of their involvement, and we can prove that their actions were illegal. We can take this to court and win." For a moment, Lily could only stare at the folder in his hands, feeling as though a huge weight was lifting off her shoulders. After everything they had been through, after all the sleepless nights and uncertainty, This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. But as the relief flooded in, a new sense of determination overtook her. This wasn't just about protecting her company anymore. It was about proving that their love could survive anything. The next few days were a blur as they filed the necessary paperwork and prepared for the legal battle. When the day came to present their case, Lily stood beside Ethan in the courtroom, her heart racing. She could feel his presence beside her, his hand gently brushing hers in silent support. The trial was intense, but with the evidence Ethan had gathered and the strength of their case, it became clear that his family's attempt to take over the company was nothing more than a calculated attempt to destroy what Lily had built. The judge ruled in their favor, and the hostile takeover was officially thwarted. When they left the courtroom, Lily couldn't suppress the smile that spread across her face. She had won, not just the battle for her company, but the battle for her future, for the love she and Ethan had fought so hard to protect. That night, they celebrated in the quiet of Lily's apartment, the victory still fresh in their minds. Ethan poured them both a glass of wine, and they sat together on the couch, letting the reality of what they had accomplished settle in. "I can't believe we did it," Lily said softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Ethan looked at her with admiration and affection. "I told you, I'd fight for you. For us." Lily met his gaze, her heart full. "I know you would, and I'm glad I chose to fight with you." There was a moment of silence between them, and then Ethan leaned in, brushing his lips against hers in a gentle kiss. When they pulled away, his eyes were filled with love and gratitude. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he said. "We have," Lily agreed. "But this is just the beginning." And as they sat there together, the future stretched out before them, uncertain, but full of possibilities. Together, they had overcome their past, and now, nothing could stop them from building the life they had always dreamed of. Lily had always believed that life was about choices. The choices you made, the risks you took, and the paths you dared to walk. But now, as she stood beside Ethan, looking out over the city lights from her office window, she realized that the biggest choice she had ever made was the one to trust in their love again. After the legal battle was over and Ethan's family had been forced to back off, things began to settle into a new normal. Lily's business flourished, even more resilient after the challenges. But more importantly, her relationship with Ethan had been rebuilt from the foundation up, stronger than before, tempered by trials, but unwavering. They worked together, not just in the boardroom, but in every part of their lives. Ethan had stepped away from the influence of his family, choosing to work side by side with Lily. It wasn't easy. There were still whispers, pressures, and old expectations lurking around every corner. But for the first time, they were facing them together, united in their commitment to each other. On a quiet evening, as the city buzzed below them, Lily and Ethan sat across from each other at her dinner table, a bottle of wine between them, both of them smiling in a way that spoke of peace, a peace they had fought hard for. "I've been thinking," Lily said, her fingers tracing the edge of her glass, "about the future, about us. This whole journey we've been on." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Go on." "I realized something," she continued, her voice steady and calm. "It wasn't just about the company, or about us fighting to be together. It was about us learning to trust again, learning that we can stand together, no matter what the world throws at us." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "I know exactly what you mean. I think we both had to learn to trust in each other, but also in ourselves. And in the future we can create together." Lily's heart swelled with warmth as she gazed at him. "I never imagined that the boy I fell in love with all those years ago would be the man standing here today, fighting for me, fighting for us. And I never imagined that, after all this time, I would find myself falling for you all over again." Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand in his gaze never leaving hers. "I've always loved you, Lily. I always will. Everything I've done, every decision I've made since we were teenagers, has been for you, for us." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, but they were tears of gratitude, of knowing that everything they had been through had led them to this moment. "I know. And I love you, Ethan. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that whatever it is, We'll face it together. The months that followed were filled with new challenges, but they were challenges that they faced hand in hand. Lily expanded her business further, making it a powerhouse that wasn't just about profit, but also about giving back. She started initiatives that helped women in business, offering mentorships and scholarships to young women who dreamed of success like she had. Ethan supported her every step of the way, using his connections to help her reach new heights. They traveled together, not just to business meetings, but to places they had always dreamed of visiting. It wasn't about luxury, it was about creating memories, experiencing life together. They laughed in ways they hadn't in years, rediscovered what they loved about each other, and built a life that was more than just surviving, it was thriving. But the biggest moment of all came when Ethan took Lily's hand one evening, a quiet, tender smile on his face. "Lily, there's one more thing I want to ask you." Her heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "I want to build a future with you, not just in business, but in every way. Will you marry me?" Lily's breath caught in her throat as tears sprang to her eyes. In that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. All the struggles, all the sacrifices, they had led her here, to the man she loved, who loved her in return, who had fought for their future. And in that moment, she knew that the future they were going to build would be one of their own making, one that no one could take away. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Their wedding was intimate, a celebration of everything they had overcome and everything they had yet to achieve. Surrounded by close friends, family, and those who had supported them through the years, Lily and Ethan exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through every challenge and triumph that would come their way. And as they walked down the aisle together, hand in hand, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would always face it together. The journey had been long, filled with heartache and hard decisions, but in the end, it was worth it. Because love, true love, had won. And together, they would continue to build a life they had always dreamed of, one that was stronger than anything life had thrown at them.